Alright guys, so in this lesson, we're going to try and move the character on the x-axis and on the z-axis. Okay, perfect. So first off, I want to add a plane to have a better vision of the character and so on. Then I want to make the runner a child of a parent of another game object. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to right click on the runner and create an empty parent. I'm going to call this empty parent player. All right, perfect. Next, I want to create a new folder and call it prefabs. All right. So let's make our runner a prefab. That way we are going to be able to instantiate it at runtime whenever we collide with a gate. Okay, perfect. Then we want to create a new folder called scripts because we are going to start scripting. Hooray! All right, let's open it. Let's create a new script called player controller. Okay, this is the script where we are going to write all the logic to control our crowd. So let's grab it and drop it onto the player. Perfect. By the way, don't forget to save your project from time to time by pressing Ctrl S or by coming here, pressing File and Save. It's better, actually. Try and make some backups of your project too. Okay, so let's double click on the player controller script now. All right, perfect. Here is our player controller script. So the first thing we want to do here is to move our player along the z-axis in the forward direction. We want the player, that's the crowd, to move on the z-axis like so. So we want to change the z value of our position property. Okay, so let's do that. I'm going to write that in the update method. So the update method as written here is called once per frame. So if you are at 60 FPS, 60 frames per second, it's basically 60 times a second. Okay, so to move the player, I'm going to say transform to access the transform component dot position to access the position variable, which is a vector 3, plus equals, and I'm going to add something to that. So I'm going to add a vector 3 dot forward, which is the z-axis, times the time.delta time. Time.delta time represents the duration of a frame. So we are adding it here because we don't want the speed of the player to be dependent on the FPS of any device. Okay, perfect. So let's try this first. Let's hit play. And now we can see that our character is moving. Perfect. Now we want to be able to control this speed. So let's add a new variable in our script here. So let's create a new header for the settings. A header is basically just a label to organize your variables and properties. Then we add the serialize field attribute to be able to see our private variable in the inspector. So let's create a new float and let's call it move speed. All right. And here we want to multiply this vector by our move speed. This will allow us to control the speed of the player. So now if we hit play, and wait, let me quickly duck the game window right here because we don't need it for now. Okay, so now the player is not moving because the move speed is 0. To get the player moving, we need to increase this value. Now we can see that he's moving. If we want it to come back, we just need to make this value negative. All right, let's bring it back to 0 again. Perfect. Now our player is moving forward. So I'm just going to set a random value of 3 or maybe 1 for now. And now we want to be able to control our player on the x-axis, like so. So basically, we want to get the touch input of the player and use it to move our player from left to right or right to left. So let's do that. Here, let's create a new header for our control. Okay, perfect. So first off, I'm going to create a new serialize field which will be a float for our control, or maybe let's call it slide speed. Okay, perfect. I'm gonna grab this line and drop it into a new method called move forward. Okay, so let's drop it here. Perfect. And now I can call this method here in the update method. It helps keep the code clean. All right, let's create a new method called manage control. Sorry. All right, so let me quickly create this method. So private again, because we don't want other scripts to access this method. Manage control. Okay, cool. So first thing we want to do here is to detect whenever the player touches the screen. So if input.get mouse button down, and it's also available for the mouse. That's why it's mouse button down. You can use touch, but for now we are just going to use the input class. So whenever the player touches the screen, we want to save this position and also save the position of the player at this precise moment. So let's say clicked screen position equals input.mouse position. All right. So now I need to create this variable. So let's go right under control here and let's create a new private vector3. Oh yeah, vector3 clicked screen position. You could use a vector2 because the z component is 0 here because it's a screen position, but anyway. Then let's create another clicked player position equals transform.position. All right, same thing here. We want to create a new variable for this. So vector3 again, and this time we need the z value of this vector3. Okay. Then when the player is actually pressing the screen, input get mouse button 0, we want to calculate the difference between the clicked position and the current position on the screen. That way we can use that to move the player on the x-axis. So I'm going to create a new float for that and call it x screen difference. This will be equals to our current position on the screen, so input.mouse position minus the position we clicked. All right, but we just need the x component of these vectors. So here we need to add .x. Okay, perfect. For this value to be responsive, we need to divide it by the width of the screen. So let's quickly do that. So we divide it equals by the screen.width. All right. And we also need to multiply it by our slide speed that we've created here. Okay, perfect. So let's do that quickly. So x screen difference multiplied by slide speed. Cool. Now that we have our the difference between the clicked position and the actual position on the screen, we can apply this to the player. So we can say transform.position equals the clicked player position, so the position we clicked at, plus vector3.right. This is the right vector, so 1, 0, 0 times the screen difference. That way we can move the player on the x-axis. So let's try it out. Let's give this a value of 1 and hit play. Okay, so now we need the actual game window to try. So I'm going to press, move on the right, move on the left, and we can see that we can control the player. Perfect. But whenever I press here, you can see that the player stops. That's wrong. Let's fix that. So here, to do that, we are going to create a new vector3 called position. and we are going to initialize it to the position of the player. So transform.position. Then we want to say position.x. We only want to modify the x value of our position. So we're going to say position.x equals the clicked player position.x plus the difference. And then we can assign this position to our player. That way, we don't change the z value of our player. You see? Okay. Let's hit play again. So now the player is moving, and even if I'm moving him from right to left, he doesn't stop. So we just fixed our issue. Perfect. You don't want to miss the next lesson because we are going to add a way to control our camera to follow the player, because now, as you can see, when I hit play, the camera is under the player, and even if I bring it up, I need to do something for it to follow the player. So let's do that.